Today we will be looking at the element of art of texture. Texture is the element of the tactile, the ability to call forth the sensation of touch. Though we are focusing on the visual arts in this class, and touch is a different sense than sight, texture is an essential part of helping a person to have a complete understanding of a work. Our senses don't operate in a vacuum. When we're shopping or even in a gallery or a museum, we experience the urge to touch and hold in order to help our brains better understand what lies before us. There are two key differences when talking about texture in art: visual and actual textures. Actual texture refers to the literal physical sensation of running your hand along an object. So let's take a moment to answer this question. What is the actual texture of the PIETÀ by Michelangelo? What would it feel like if you ran your hand along its surface? Now let's consider that while the artists of the Renaissance praised the material of marble for its ability to be worked and refined, and the people who were considered to be the best in the world, like Michelangelo, were known for how well they could imitate the texture of cloth or skin in marble, the actual texture of the material remains the same. Polished marble will always be smooth, hard, and cool to the touch. Imitation is not actuality. Visual texture, on the other hand, refers to the use of elements such as line, color, value, or shape to create the illusions of actual texture. Painters in the Dutch age were particularly interested in mimicking textures as accurately as possible as a way to show their prowess and their skill as a craftsman. While this is all just paint on the surface of a canvas, your brain still recognizes and feels like it is looking at the hard, slick surfaces of glass, the matte smoothness of the lobster shell and the ridges of its underbelly, the wrinkles that are embedded in the tablecloth, or the juicy, wet look of the lemon, and especially that airy, pocked texture on the side of that loaf of bread. At its most extreme, visual textures can be so convincing that the illusion is beyond detection with the eye alone. Trompe l'œil, or to trick or fool the eye, refers to the efforts of an artist to trick viewers into thinking an artwork is made from something it's not. It often manifests as sculptures imitating other materials, as in the case of MARILYN LEVINE in her ceramic work. She was so skilled in the ability to mimic the textures of leather or other materials in clay that it is hard to believe that everything in her pieces are entirely 100% ceramic. Trompe l'œil can be used as a means to impress others with the high degree of craftsmanship and inspire wonder. You may recognize trompe l'œil techniques from street artists who use illusions of perspective and texture to create convincing imagery from a particular vantage point. Now, in addition to mimicking visual textures, paintings do possess actual physical textures as well. The impasto technique especially is well known for how thickly the paint is layered onto the canvas, giving it a rough actual texture that corresponds with the brushstrokes. We most commonly associate impasto with Impressionist and Post-Impressionist artists like Van Gogh or Monet because the thick application and unblended strokes were a way for artists to paint faster, allowing their works to become more intimate snapshots of moments. This heavy application of paint and the influence of the quickness of the alla prima style is one reason many of these artists were so prolific. Van Gogh himself painted over 900 paintings in the course of little more than 9 years, and his unblended impasto brushstrokes go hand in hand with his output. Wayne Thiebaud's Cakes is a wonderful example of actual texture based off of impasto being used to create a visually enticing experience. When you're standing in front of this painting in the gallery in Washington, D.C., it is very large. It's as large as a storefront window. So when you stand in front of Thibaud's cakes, the application of the paint in a way that mimics frosting is so convincing that it makes you actually kind of want to lick the painting itself. It's a great example of thick application of texture, creating a wonderful visual experience. Now let's take a moment to look at this work by Rembrandt and ask yourself, what are the actual textures and the visual textures in this work? What is the artist conveying to you visually? What does it seem like you should be feeling? And then what is the actual physical property of the piece? What would it feel like to close your eyes and run your hand alongside it? And then at times, artists may use texture as a way to create a juxtaposition or a contrast with a message. When the surrealist artist MERET Oppenheim wrapped a dish in gazelle fur, she changed the expectations that we have when we ask for a cup of tea. The object, as she called it, can be open to many interpretations. Is it a living thing that has taken on the shape of a cup? Is it a cup that has grown sentience and become alive somehow? Now, you will have the opportunity to learn more about this in your response paper if you choose that particular prompt, but I will leave you with this question. What reactions would you have if a waiter or host placed this cup before you? What sensations would you feel if you attempted to use the cup? And in answering these questions, you should begin to realize that texture is vastly more powerful than you previously imagined.